Eagles co-founder Glenn Frey, so many celebrating the rock and roll legend. He passed away at the age of 67.
When Glenn Frey, the legendary co-founder of the Eagles, passed away, the world mourned the loss of a rock icon. But no one expected the emotional storm that followed when bandmate Don Henley finally broke his silence. With heartfelt words that pierced through the grief, Henley's tribute left fans in awe, revealing untold truths about their bond and legacy. Here's what Henley said that shocked the world. Glenn Frey's passing. When Glenn Frey passed away on January 18, 2016, the music world lost one of its brightest stars. The news was both sudden and heartbreaking, leaving fans, friends, and fellow musicians grappling with the loss of a man whose music had touched millions. Glenn Frey wasn't just a member of the Eagles. He was a driving force behind their sound, their success, and their legacy. His passing marked the end of an era for rock music. Frey's health challenges were not widely known to the public until late in his life. For years, he battled a series of medical issues, many stemming from rheumatoid arthritis, a condition he had been managing since the early 2000s. While Frey rarely spoke publicly about his health, the toll it took on his body became increasingly apparent in the years leading up to his death. Complications from rheumatoid arthritis led to severe side effects, including colitis and pneumonia. By late 2015, Frey's condition had worsened significantly, prompting him to undergo surgery in November of that year. Though the surgery was intended to address some of the complications, it left him in a fragile state, unable to fully recover. In January 2016, Frey's health took a turn for the worse. The combination of his existing conditions, surgery recovery, and a battle with pneumonia proved to be too much. On January 18th, his family announced that he had passed away at the age of 67. Frey's death was attributed to complications from rheumatoid arthritis, acute ulcerative colitis, and pneumonia. The announcement shocked fans worldwide, many of whom were unaware of the extent of his health struggles. The idea that someone as vibrant and full of life as Glenn Frey could be gone was difficult to comprehend. The loss of Glenn Frey resonated far beyond his fan base. Musicians and industry leaders alike paid tribute to the man who had shaped the sound of a generation. Don Henley, Frey's longtime collaborator and co-founder of the Eagles, released a heartfelt statement calling him the glue that held the band together. Henley described Frey as a man with a ferocious work ethic and a tireless pursuit of perfection, praising his humor, generosity, and passion. Jackson Browne, who co-wrote Take It Easy with Frey, also shared his grief, calling Frey a tremendous songwriter and a dear friend. Browne noted that Frey's music would live on, continuing to inspire and bring joy to listeners around the world. Other legendary artists, including Billy Joel, Carole King, and Stevie Nicks, expressed their sorrow and shared their admiration for Frey's contributions to music. Many highlighted his unique ability to blend rock, country, and folk into a sound that was distinctly his own. For the Eagles, the loss of Glenn Frey was deeply personal. The band had been more than a group of musicians. It was a family. Frey was not just a bandmate, he was a brother, a leader, and a friend. His absence left a void that was impossible to fill. After Frey's death, the Eagles' future seemed uncertain. How could the band continue without one of its founding members and primary voices? Don Henley in particular wrestled with the question of whether it was right to move forward. For a time, it seemed as though Frey's passing might mark the end of the Eagles. But the band eventually found a way to honor Frey's legacy while continuing to share their music with the world. In 2017, the Eagles returned to the stage with Frey's son, Deacon Frey, stepping in to carry on his father's work. Deacon's inclusion was a poignant reminder of Glenn Frey's lasting influence, both on the band and on those who loved him. Glenn Frey's life and legacy. Glenn Frey was born on November 6, 1948, in Detroit, Michigan. Raised in a working-class neighborhood, he grew up surrounded by the dynamic music of the 1950s and 60s. Detroit, a city synonymous with the soulful rhythms of Motown, also had a burgeoning rock scene, and Glenn absorbed it all like a sponge. From a young age, he showed an interest in music, learning to play the piano before eventually picking up the guitar. His early influences included the Beatles, Bob Dylan, and the folk rock movement, which would later shape his own unique sound. As a teenager, Frey joined several local bands, exploring his passion for performing and songwriting. One of the most formative experiences of his early career was working with Bob Seger. Frey played guitar and sang backup vocals on some of Seger's tracks, gaining invaluable insights into professional music production. This collaboration gave him his first taste of what it meant to be a serious musician. He carried these lessons with him when he decided to leave Michigan and head west to Los Angeles in the late 1960s. In Los Angeles, Frey found himself at the epicenter of a cultural and musical revolution. The Laurel Canyon scene was buzzing with creativity, with artists like Joni Mitchell, Crosby, Stills and Nash, and Jackson Browne shaping the sound of a generation. Frey immersed himself in this community, honing his craft and forming connections that would prove pivotal to his career. In 1971, Glenn Frey co-founded the Eagles, a band that would go on to define the sound of the 1970s. Alongside Don Henley, Bernie Leadon, and Randy Meisner, Frey created music that blended rock, country, and folk in a way that felt fresh and timeless. The Eagles quickly rose to prominence, becoming one of the most successful bands in history. Frey was not only a founding member but also one of the band's key visionaries. He played a central role in shaping their sound and direction, ensuring they stayed true to their roots while pushing the boundaries of what a rock band could achieve. His contributions as a vocalist, guitarist, and songwriter were instrumental in their success. Glenn Frey's songwriting was one of his most significant talents. He had a knack for crafting melodies that were both catchy and emotionally resonant. Many of the Eagles' biggest hits bore his creative fingerprints. He co-wrote "Take It Easy," the song that put the Eagles on the map with Jackson Browne. Its easygoing vibe and relatable lyrics captured the spirit of a generation looking for freedom and adventure. Frey also co-wrote classics like Lion Eyes and Tequila Sunrise, both of which showcased his ability to tell compelling stories through music. His smooth vocals and guitar work added depth and texture to the band's sound, creating a style that was both laid-back and sophisticated. Perhaps the most iconic of all Eagles songs, Hotel California, was another collaborative masterpiece that highlighted Frey's talent. While Don Henley took the lead vocals, Frey's guitar work and influence on the track's structure were undeniable. The song became a cultural phenomenon, symbolizing the allure and darkness of the California dream. The Eagles produced a string of hits that became the soundtrack of the 1970s and beyond. Tracks like Peaceful Easy Feeling, Already Gone, and New Kid in Town showcased the band's versatility and Frey's ability to connect with listeners on a deeply personal level. Their music wasn't just popular, it was a reflection of the times, capturing the hopes, dreams, and challenges of a rapidly changing society. Lion Eyes, for example, offered a poignant commentary on relationships and infidelity, delivered with a melody that felt timeless. Take It to the Limit, another hit co-written by Frey, became an anthem of perseverance and pushing boundaries, resonating with anyone striving for something more in life. Glenn Frey and the Eagles played a pivotal role in blurring the lines between rock and country music. At a time when genres were often rigidly separated, the band embraced elements of both, creating a sound that was uniquely their own. This fusion helped pave the way for future artists and bands to experiment with genre blending, opening new doors in the music industry. The Eagles' success also had a significant impact on the burgeoning country rock movement. Bands like Poco and Pure Prairie League followed in their footsteps, while later artists like Garth Brooks and Shania Twain cited the Eagles as a major influence. Frey's contributions to this genre-crossing style helped solidify his place as a trailblazer in the music world. Beyond his work with the Eagles, Glenn Frey enjoyed a successful solo career in the 1980s. Hits like The Heat Is On and You Belong to the City showcased a different side of his artistry, proving that he could shine as a solo performer. These songs became staples of 1980s pop culture, earning Frey a new generation of fans. His partnership with Don Henley was particularly significant. Together, they formed one of the most successful songwriting duos in music history. While their relationship wasn't without its challenges, their mutual respect and shared vision were instrumental in the Eagles' enduring success. Frey's impact wasn't limited to those he worked with directly. His music inspired countless artists across generations, shaping the sound of rock and country music for decades to come. Don Henley's relationship with Glenn Frey. The bond between Don Henley and Glenn Frey was central to the formation and success of the Eagles, one of the most iconic rock bands in history. Their partnership spanned decades, and together they crafted some of the most enduring songs in the world of music. Yet the relationship between the two was not always smooth. It was a combination of collaboration, conflict, and reconciliation that eventually formed the foundation of their lasting friendship and creative partnership. The story of Don Henley and Glenn Frey began in the early 1970s in Los Angeles, when both men were navigating the burgeoning music scene. Originally from Detroit, Frey had already carved out a place for himself in the city, playing with several bands before relocating to Los Angeles. Henley, a native of Texas, had been chasing his own dreams of success in the world of music. Fate brought them together through Linda Ronstadt, who was putting together a backup band for her tour at the time. Henley and Frey were asked to join her on the road, and it was during this tour that their friendship began to grow. Frey and Henley quickly realized they shared a deep passion for music and the stories that music could tell. Their early conversations revolved around their shared admiration for the classics, songwriters like Bob Dylan, the Beatles, and folk legends, and their desire to create something new while keeping the essence of those influences. It didn't take long before they began writing together. Frey's knack for melody, paired with Henley's poetic lyrics, would become the hallmark of the Eagles' sound. Henley and Frey were the heartbeat of the Eagles. They didn't just work together, they meshed. Their chemistry in the studio was undeniable, and it was clear that their combined strengths made the Eagles' sound unique. Frey was the energetic force, always striving to push the band to the next level, while Henley was more introspective, carefully crafting lyrics that resonated on a deep emotional level. Their songwriting process was a blend of Frey's drive and Henley's reflective nature. Frey would often bring the music, the melodies, and the arrangements, while Henley would dive deep into the emotional core of a song. Together, they wrote some of the Eagles' most memorable hits, including Take It Easy, Lion Eyes, and Hotel California. These songs, with their seamless integration of rock, country, and folk, captured the essence of their shared vision, a fusion of different genres that told authentic, relatable stories, challenges, and conflicts. However, as with any close relationship, their partnership was not without its challenges. The success of the Eagles brought immense pressure, and the road to stardom wasn't always smooth. Both Frey and Henley had strong personalities and artistic visions, which occasionally led to conflict. While their mutual respect was the foundation of their relationship, their disagreements over the direction of the band became more apparent as time went on. Frey, known for his fiery temperament, was often vocal about the band's business decisions, wanting to maintain control over the group's direction. Henley, on the other hand, was deeply invested in perfecting the band's sound and was known for his perfectionism, sometimes leading to tension when it came to recording or performing. While these conflicts were never enough to tear the band apart, they were a reminder of how deeply invested they both were in the success of the Eagles. One of the most famous periods of tension came in the late 1970s when internal conflicts reached their peak. After the release of Hotel California, the Eagles were at the height of their fame. However, the success of the album only seemed to intensify the personal and professional issues within the band. The tension between Frey and Henley came to a head during the recording of The Long Run. The band members were exhausted and their creative differences seemed to be growing wider. In 1980, after a particularly volatile period, the Eagles decided to take a break, and they officially split up. For years, Frey and Henley went their separate ways, each focusing on their solo careers. However, despite the break, both men knew that the Eagles' legacy was too important to leave behind forever. In 1994, after a 14-year hiatus, the Eagles reunited for a legendary tour, Don Henley's Silence after Frey's death. The news of Frey's death hit Henley hard. They had been through everything together, forming the Eagles, experiencing the band's meteoric rise, navigating internal conflicts, and ultimately reconciling their differences to reunite years later. Frey was not just a collaborator to Henley, he was a brother. Henley was deeply affected by the loss of his friend, and initially he struggled to process the grief that accompanied it. He had already experienced the highs and lows of their shared career, but this felt different, personal, and almost overwhelming. Henley's initial reaction to Frey's passing was one of deep sorrow. The loss of someone he had spent decades creating music with and shared countless memories with was difficult to comprehend. Henley, known for his thoughtful and introspective nature, took his time to absorb the gravity of the situation. At first, he was too shaken to speak publicly about Frey's death, as he processed the loss in private. As the days passed, fans and media alike began to speculate about Henley's silence. Many wondered why he wasn't speaking out or releasing a statement like other music community members. Was he angry? Was he too heartbroken to speak? Fans were desperate for a reaction from Henley as they looked to him for guidance in understanding how to cope with Frey's loss. The media tried to fill the void left by Henley's silence, suggesting everything from personal disputes between the two men to the idea that Henley was overwhelmed by grief. The pressure on Henley to comment became intense. Fans and journalists alike anxiously awaited some form of tribute, but Henley, as always, was true to his nature, deliberate and thoughtful in his actions, unwilling to be rushed into a public statement. Don Henley breaks his silence. After the world had mourned Glenn Frey's sudden passing, Don Henley remained largely silent, allowing the grief to settle before expressing his feelings publicly. However, the weight of Frey's loss was too great to stay unspoken forever. Finally, Henley broke his silence, revealing his heart in a statement that touched fans and musicians alike. After Frey's death, Henley's first public words reflected the deep, abiding bond between the two men. He described Frey as more than just a bandmate. He was his closest friend, a brother in every sense of the word. Henley spoke fondly of their early years, recalling their shared vision for the Eagles and how their friendship grew alongside the success of the band. Frey wasn't just a talented musician. He was an integral part of Henley's life, both personally and professionally. Henley's statement conveyed the emotions he had been grappling with privately. The loss of a lifelong friend and collaborator was something he couldn't quickly put into words. In his public message, Henley expressed the immense pain of losing someone who had been by his side through every triumph and hardship, someone who had helped shape his career in ways words couldn't fully express. Henley acknowledged how difficult it was to accept the void left by Frey's passing, knowing that their partnership had formed the very foundation of the Eagles. Henley's struggles with Frey's absence. In his statement, Henley didn't shy away from the reality of how difficult it had been for him to cope with Frey's death. He admitted that the absence of his close friend was overwhelming and that it had left a hole in both his life and the band. For Henley, who had always had a deep respect for Frey's artistic vision, moving forward without him was one of the hardest things he had to face. Henley spoke candidly about how difficult it was to imagine performing the Eagles' music without Frey's presence, and how his absence had changed the dynamics of the group. Henley's message also included some shocking revelations that surprised fans and the media. He opened up about the reality of Frey's health struggles in the years leading up to his death, detailing how Frey had battled various health issues in silence, often pushing through pain to continue working. Henley spoke of Frey's resilience and strength, which had often gone unnoticed by the public. He revealed that Frey did not want anyone to know the extent of his struggles, preferring to maintain his private life away from the prying eyes of the media. Henley also shared how the band's close-knit bond allowed them to support each other through difficult times, even when the outside world remained unaware of their challenges. Henley also delved into some of the unseen challenges the Eagles faced throughout their career, many of which had been overshadowed by their success. While the band had experienced countless triumphs, it had also struggled with internal conflicts, the pressures of fame, and the complex dynamics between its members. Henley acknowledged that these challenges were often tricky to navigate, but Frey's leadership and his unwavering commitment to the band had always held them together. Henley reflected on the ups and downs of their journey and how, despite everything, their shared love for music always brought them back to the stage. The passing of Glenn Frey left a massive void in the Eagles, and it was uncertain whether the band could continue without him. However, after some reflection, the band made the decision to keep moving forward, recognizing that Frey's legacy was bigger than any one person. One of the significant steps taken in the aftermath was the inclusion of Frey's son, Deacon Frey, in the band. Deacon, who had been part of the Eagles' touring lineup, brought a sense of continuity to the band, providing a way to honor his father's memory while continuing the group's musical legacy. His addition to the band was met with a mix of emotions from fans, some of whom embraced the idea, while others were hesitant to see the Eagles without Glenn Frey's commanding presence. After Don Henley's emotional tribute to Glenn Frey, fans around the world are left in awe. His heartfelt words reveal the depth of their friendship and legacy. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more updates.